Welcome to Reap What You Sow. I am here with none other than not just an amazing actor, not just a book writer, not just a kick-ass karate master, but
No.
but just overall great guy.
Thanks,
Welcome, Sean Kanan.
It's great to. I had to come do your podcast because how else was I going to get a chance to hang out and talk with you?
That's true.
So
Yeah, because you're a busy guy too.
You're a busy guy too.
It's we got a lot going on these days. A lot to be grateful
it's a
for.
blessing.
I was looking through all the stuff. I was doing a bunch of research on you last night, and just checking some stuff out. Normally I don't have to because I know a lot about you already,
Right.
but I just wanted to see if there was anything I missed. And something that came up that I thought was really interesting was that your Wikipedia page.
Uh-oh.
And I don't know how accurate it is, but it was telling me that when you were filming Karate Kid that you got injured on set.
Yeah, we had been filming for just about 2 weeks, rehearsing for about a month, and I started having some pain in my upper left thigh, which I thought was from all the martial arts I was doing. So
Yeah.
I was taking a lot of aspirin. And we broke for Christmas, and I drove with a friend to Las Vegas through the desert. And on Christmas Day, 1988, I passed out in the Dunes Casino from internal bleeding from blood loss. And the pain in my thigh was blood dripping on my femoral artery. And the aspirin blood thinner exacerbated the bleeding. And so while everyone was preparing Christmas with family and friends, wrapping gifts, I was having a nurse in the ER in Las Vegas tell me that they weren't sure they could save my life.
Wow.
It was, to say the least, a profound moment in my life. I would say to date, it's probably the scariest thing that's ever happened to me.
I would imagine so, man, and not just the part of actually being afraid for your life, but then on top of it, it's very sentimental around those time of the years too. I mean,
Well, it's that, and then I'm also, I'm in my first big acting job. I mean, I got picked out of thousands of people, and it really was like winning the lottery.
right.
And to now be facing the prospect of not being able to finish the film, it was a lot to process for a young guy.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I feel like that probably defined a lot of who you are.
Absolutely.
And I feel like you really live with a lot of gratitude.
I do. And it's something that I've gotten a lot more in touch with in recent years. It's so easy, especially working in the entertainment industry, to look at what you don't have, to live in scarcity. And once you live in gratitude, you're living in the present. And when you're living in the present, I really believe that you kind of put out a different vibe. You attract more abundance, which gives you more reason to be grateful. So that's what I focus on.
I agree with you. There is something about that of when you're in scarcity or fear that you attract that.
Absolutely.
And it's the same.
It's the law of vibration. I'm a huge proponent of the law of vibration.
Well, that brings me into the next point about what your book, about everything you write about. I mean, I feel like you kind of put everything in a little book that says, this is the way I live.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's nice because that gave me a really good glimpse of who you are,
Right.
besides what I know. And honestly, there was nothing in there that was that surprising to me because of everything that I've talked to you about previously, is that you resonate and you really project that
Thank you.
good energy. So
Thank you. I tell everybody, before you think that I'm living on top of a mountain in Kathmandu, levitating 3 feet off the ground, contemplating my navel, it's because I have made every mistake in my own book a dozen times over, usually from banging my head on a wall or a door or something. And if I can help people circumvent some of the more common pitfalls and traps and things that everybody deals with, challenges, it's not about hoisting somebody up to the top of the mountain. It's just about kind of helping them get themselves up.
yeah, you can lead a horse to water,
Right.
kind of idea, right? Like, just get me there.
Right.
I know how to drink. I can do it.
Right.
Just get me to where I need to go, and I can be on my way. And it's really powerful, man. I did not know that, and that's about being in the middle of filming and having that whole thing.
Yeah.
It's just really scary stuff.
It was, my parents could only get one ticket from the East Coast because it was they had a flight at midnight. So my dad decided he'd come out first, and I woke up in the recovery room. I had a 15-inch wound on my abdomen with staples, and I saw my poor father sitting in a chair, and he was just gray. And in retrospect, just thinking about what it must have been like for my dad to be flying across the country knowing his kid's in emergency surgery, not knowing if he's going to make it.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal, not just for me, but for a lot of people.
Yeah, because you impact your whole family, right? I mean, that's not just you're afraid, but then they're also afraid. They're your parents, of course.
As I don't even want to use the word terrible, but as traumatic an event as that was, I wouldn't change it. I'll tell you why. Because once I got the phone call from John Avildsen, who was the director of the Karate Kid 3, the Karate Kid 2, won the Oscar for Rocky, I didn't have to wait long to figure out what was going to happen. I basically was told, get back to set within 2 weeks or we're going to fire you and recast. And something really interesting happened. Initially I was really angry. I was angry at the universe. I was angry at how I was being treated by the studio. There were no balloons, there was no flowers.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing happened pretty quickly. That anger became my why. And that why got me out of bed the first day, and all I could do was walk to the bathroom across the floor. And the next day, I could walk around the entire hallway of the hospital floor. And by the fourth or fifth day, I had them discharge me against medical advice. And I recuperated for, I think, about a week. And then I started working out with a guy who was a lineman for the Rams when they were in Los Angeles all those years ago in the 80s. And long story short, I wound up doing all of my own martial arts stunts in Karate Kid 3. And so people always say to me, what was the biggest thing in your career? And they think it's Karate Kid 3. And in many ways it is, but not for the reasons that people think. Because at 22, when I was suddenly faced with my own mortality, I was able to uncover a part of my character that I didn't know existed, and it sort of taught me a little about myself, and so it was a really good lesson.
Oh, yeah, I mean that's something that I you don't get that anywhere else. That's a lesson that comes in, and I feel like hardships are something that
Absolutely.
people need, and when you don't have them, you don't have character. You need to go through something.
Steel is forged in the fire.
That's it, and that's where diamonds are made of pressure, right? Like It's all the same thing, and with you, you're blessed and cursed at the same time, right? Like you got this beautiful lesson from something really tragic, and now look at what it's.
It's funny. It's like a lot of life is about the stories that we attach to the events in our lives, and you can either attach a story that's empowering or disempowering. And I very easily could have created the story that Hollywood is a really lousy place. Your only value is being a cog in a machine that's to make money, blah, 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 and become very jaded. But instead, I chose to attach the story that, when the chips were down and my back was against the wall, I was able to do what I had to do, not only to survive, but to thrive, to finish the film. And so now when things get difficult or life throws me a curveball, which it does all the time, I say to myself, yeah, but was it really as difficult as, bleeding to death in the emergency room? And I kind of give myself a little talk and go out there.
I can do this.
Yeah,
I can do this. Yeah. That I was just talking to someone about this recently, about how everyone has like this slight amnesia. We all forget how challenging things have been, and then all of a sudden this problem that my car got a flat tire. How am I going to get to this meeting that I have? It's cry. You're angry. It's like you were bleeding in a hospital bed.
I think people also don't realize how strong they are. Everybody, I believe, has some kind of internal fortitude, some kind of internal strength. And sometimes it takes something like what happened to me to reveal it. Other times it's through some kind of a process where they affect a transformation and it's revealed. But I think that betting on yourself is always a good bet, and everybody has some kind of a strength within themselves.
I agree. I've seen so many people change their lives and change other people's lives, and then even then, you've seen like the videos of people who randomly there's a kid under a car, and then three guys just pick up an entire car. That's what's inside. It just takes something like that to pull it out. The beautiful thing is when you find it and you know you have it, and then afterwards you're like, wow, you look at yourself a lot differently.
You do, and I think you learn to demand more of yourself because you know what you're capable of, and you know that if you're not reaching that level, that you're not really giving 100%.
That's the truth. Is that all of a sudden you realize, wow, I didn't know I had so much in me, and I didn't know that I could give even more than what I was. I thought I was doing everything I could, but now I know otherwise, right? And I feel like that event probably really shaped your perspective on things, and
it did in so many different ways. You know, when you're a kid, which 22 is still very much a kid in my book, you know, you think you're immortal. You know, here I am, I'm doing a martial arts movie, I'm in great shape, blah, blah, blah. And then you find out that God has other plans for you, and it puts things in perspective. And it taught me a lot about the fragility of life, but also the resilience of the human spirit. I mean, everything's a yin yang, right?
Yep.
It's you know.
Yeah, it's really difficult to be faced with something so strong and so real, because it's always something that you probably have watched a million movies of people getting sick or passing away, right? And then it's when it's in your face.
Different when it happens to you.
It's different when it happens to you. Yeah. And it's like I said, it's a beautiful thing now, right?
In retrospect.
Yeah, in retrospect, it's a beautiful thing. That's the worst part, is that everything that happens that's bad, somehow we can either romanticize or make fun of. Right. And that for me, I always choose the laugh. It's a big deal, right? But I almost died. That's not, you know. But it's really cool, and I feel like now you have all these great lessons, all because of these beautiful things that have happened in your. We'll call them beautiful things that have happened in your life, right? And now you have a book, right? And four?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Which one was Way of the Cobra?
Way of the Cobra was my third.
That was your third book?
Yeah, and then the sequel is called Welcome to the Kumite.
When did that come out?
Welcome to the Kumite came out last September.
Wow.
Way of the Cobra just came out on Audible about 2.5 weeks ago. And right now, my wife Michelle and I are writing the third installment. We're going to do it together. It's called Cobra Couples.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you narrate it yourself as well?
I did.
Oh, that's even better. That's great.
Yeah.
That's always a treat when someone does it. You can actually hear how the book is supposed to be.
Yeah, people who've read the book and then listened to the audio book say that they get a completely different perspective from it, because I think my passion for it comes through.
Right.
And I wasn't going to let anybody else narrate it.
Yeah. How did it feel to read out loud?
It's surprisingly tiring.
Really?
Like, you wouldn't think reading is tiring, and you're sitting there and you're reading for hours and hours and hours and going back, and if you take a breath that's too long or you mispronounce a word. So it was tedious, but I recognized that it was important. And I don't want this to sound self-important, but I honestly know that the information in those two books has the ability to be a catalyst to change people's lives.
I agree.
And so I took it was a sense of responsibility that I really needed to get this done and do it well and get it to as many people as I could.
That was your why.
Yeah, that was my why. Absolutely.
Yeah, to really to help other people and get them to change, because it's really tough, and you never know what's going to be that tipping point. A lot of people, it's pain, right?
And I think the other thing too is a lot of people can hear the same piece of information repetitively, and sometimes it's the messenger who sometimes is able to resonate. It's like that thing when you're 15 or 16 and you've got all sorts of, static with your dad, and it doesn't matter what he says, no matter how good the advice is, you just can't really hear it. And then somebody comes along 10 years later and says the same thing, and it's like an epiphany.
Yep. Yeah. The worst part is they could say it in the same week as your dad, and your friend's just like, hey, you shouldn't do that. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, that's a good idea.
I mean,
And
listen, I'm guilty of that too.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's it's just how it works. And I was gonna one thing I wanted to talk to you about too was about Studio City
Yeah.
writing. Are you directing as well? You're just writing, right?
No, I don't direct. I
Yeah,
produce
okay.
and I write
Yeah.
and act.
That's
And
unbelievable,
yeah,
right? Like you write a show, you get to act in it. That's all. That's
I got to tell you, I mean, to have the creative latitude as an actor, you know, when you create a show, I mean, it's just you just don't get that unless it's your show,
yeah.
and it's just such a fun, liberating, freeing, amazing experience.
I would imagine because you're the one finally saying this is what
Yeah.
I want to say,
Yeah.
and I feel like depending on who is doing the show or movie is
Well,
that they give you some leeway, but they're
they
like
give
put
you
it
some,
right
sure,
back.
sure, but you know,
But
I'm really lucky that the people, the team on Studio City, fantastic. You know, my wife Michelle is one of the other executive producers and head writers. Our friend Timothy Woodward Jr. has directed all the episodes so far.
wow,
He's a film director. He writes. It's tremendous. I mean, we really have an incredible group of creative people that I'm not going to lie. A lot of times, best idea manifests from friction rather than absorption. I mean, our creative process can be a bit of a fist fight sometimes, but it's only because we're all sort of so passionate about it.
yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That when you care so much
Yeah.
about it, you may
Yeah.
all have different directions, but then all of a sudden
we
somehow
we,
it all
we
shakes
managed to
out.
pull it together, and you know it's been an incredible experience. We got nominated for I think 14 Emmys. We won 3.
Wow.
We are going to be putting together another season towards the end of this year, and we signed a deal with a distribution company that's going to be releasing Studio City on multiple platforms.
Amazing.
Later, well, probably within the first quarter of this year.
Oh wow.
So a lot of exciting stuff going on.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome, man.
Yeah.
I bet that feels good to have so many things kind of going, right? Like
It does. I mean, you know, getting anything made in Hollywood, whether anyone sees it or not, it's a big deal. It's hard. And then when you make something and you know you get positive feedback, that's even better. And then when you find an audience that likes it, so we've really been blessed that this has been just a great experience so far for everybody. We want to keep it going.
yeah, it's a hurdle, right? Like you guys
It's constant hurdles.
you have to find the idea to then
Yeah.
find the people to help you produce the idea, to then make the idea, to then
Yeah.
how do I get it out to the people?
Yeah.
And then how is it received and so on and so forth. So it's really cool that I guess that persistence that I've seen throughout your story. Is it just very
Yeah, I
persistent?
mean, definitely persistence. I've been really fortunate that I've had some very talented people who happen to be friends, and I'm married to one of them. You know, have made this a reality. It sat on my desk for a long time,
Wow.
and you know, I had tried for a long time to get it made, and it wasn't until everybody came in the kitchen and put something different in the stew that you know it was able to really cook.
It finally came together. A lot of that community. We need people.
Yeah,
We need people
Yeah.
in order to make stuff. We
Yeah.
can't do everything alone, right?
absolutely not.
I feel like that's always a tough thing
I think
for
people
me.
have a tough time asking for help.
Yeah.
And I find that most people like to help other people. I know I do.
Yeah.
And I have a little bit of a selfish motivation for it, you know, with my coaching and I probably to a certain extent my writing. I stay accountable that way.
Mhm.
You know, and you know, we know accountability is really important. And you know, my coaching people and working with them keeps my game sharp. And when I say game, I mean, you know, the qualities that I want to cultivate as a man, I need to keep them constantly working rather than just talking about them.
That is always a struggle, right?
Right.
You have to constantly be doing the actions that you say you're going to do.
Yeah, you got to walk it like you talk it.
Yeah, because that's at the end of the day, what do we really have? We have our word.
You have your word.
And-
Character is the first pillar in Way of the Cobra, which is an acronym. It's character, optimization, balance, respect, and abundance. And I say in the book, and whenever I speak, I say, if you hear nothing else I say, hear this: character is everything,
Hmm.
and it is.
Yeah, being able to say your word and then hold your accountability and be able to
Yeah.
do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, and it's also how you behave when no one's watching.
Mm.
How do you conduct yourself when there's nothing to be gained, and it might most likely is the more difficult thing to do.
Those are the tough situations.
Yeah,
But that's where you're judged, right? That's where you judge yourself at
you
least.
judge yourself.
That's where you judge yourself.
Yeah, and listen, I'm certainly not perfect, but it's a constant process, and I'm at the point now where whenever I do something that I'm like, that's gonna kind of transgress my personal sense of character. Do the difficult thing. Don't be lazy. Do the right thing because it's right.
Yeah.
So it's like I still have to police myself all
Right.
the time.
Well, and you know what I've found personally is that when I do the thing that's harder, I
Yes.
always get a better result than I did if I would have taken the shortcut.
Amen. And also, how do you build self-esteem? You
Do a
do estimable acts.
Yeah. Yeah.
The more you put out good in the world, the more confident and stronger you become, and your light shines brighter. And
That's everyone starts to win. If you're feeling better, you're able to give more of yourself to other
Yes.
people. You're able to bring more people up. You feel great.
yeah,
And then
it's
shines.
interesting. The second book that I put out was called Success Factor X. I wrote it with somebody named Joe Lieberman, and we went out to 50 exceptional individuals: Tony Robbins, Mark Cuban, Daryl McDaniels from Run DMC, Sarah Blakely, first female billionaire, athletes, and we said, what is your, what can you tell us about success? And almost to a person, they described success as the ability to help other people achieve their success. And that's why all of those people are successful. It's not about, what can I get for myself? In doing that and helping other people as a very nice byproduct, you probably will become very successful and whatever, but it really is about giving back with no ulterior motive.
And no expectation.
With no expectation too.
Yeah.
Because if you have an expectation when you go into giving something, you're setting yourself up for being disappointed, because you can't control what other people do. All you can control is how you react to external stimuli, your emotional response.
Yes. And I feel like that's perfect, because you can't control how someone's going to receive what you're going to give them.
Right.
And you had that expectation. You're going to give me this thing now, and then it didn't happen. And now I'm mad at you, and we didn't even agree on anything. I'm just mad at you for it gets messy.
Yeah. One of the best lessons that I've learned in recent years is every time I have done something, when I've had my eye on a result that I wanted out of the transaction, something goes wrong. Invariably something goes wrong, and it's because my intentionality is off center. When I go into doing something for the right reasons, and if I apply what I need to effectively and consistently and with integrity, almost always I get the result that I want. I'm a huge proponent of if you want results, stay out of them. Build a bulletproof process. Like for you, when you do your suits, when you make your beautiful suits, I guarantee you have a process for what you do that but like the back of your hand. It's taken you a long time to come up with it. You've probably done diagnostics where you've tweaked here and there, but if you apply it consistently and effectively, you're going to get the result you want. It's the same for me when it comes down to, preparation for a role, even like driving a car. I mean, we probably drive a car 99.9% the same way. You unlock the car, you sit down, you put the safety belt on, you put something in the nav, you check the mirrors, throw it in reverse, check the mirrors, throw it in drive, obey the street signs, and you expect to get where you're going to go. You don't drive like, oh my God, am I going to get there? Because you build a bulletproof process for driving.
Right.
You don't need to worry about the results. And if you can do that for anything in your life, the results will come. They may not come exactly when you want. They may not come exactly how you envision them, but you will get results.
That is always the thing that throws people off, is you don't know when and you don't know how. It always comes, but it may not be exactly, you may not have gotten $1 million here or whatever, but then somehow everything comes together, and then when you look at it, you're like, I made $1 million. But it wasn't, here's the check for $1 million for the one thing.
Right.
It's all, sometimes success is backdoored.
I think something a lot of people have trouble either understanding or remembering with success is that they see the result as the destination, and they don't realize that the process is part of being successful, first of all. But it's a journey, and you have to not just be looking over the horizon to get the reward, the result. You have to put in the work during the journey, during the process.
Agreed. It's you have to be consistent throughout the entire thing, and you have to learn to enjoy the journey.
Absolutely. For acting, for instance, I mean, I probably get 5 or 6 out of every 100 jobs I audition for. That's a horrible percentage. And if I looked at every single time that I didn't get a job as a failure, I wouldn't be able to set foot in another room, right? But I look at them as teachers, and you have to learn to do that. You have to learn to not get caught up in the tangible results, and understand that there's value in the process too.
Yes, because every time you start to get in the results, then your expectations don't get met. Everything gets down, and then all of a sudden it's pretty easy to be like, whoa, I'm terrible. And in any business, right? Like in my business specifically, I can have a terrible month, and in one day it's a great month. Yeah. And that's the same thing with life. You can have a bad 3 weeks, and then one thing happens, and then
the Buddhists talk about one of the greatest causes of suffering is attachment. We get attached to an idea, a result, and when it doesn't come to fruition the way we want, it causes anger and resentment, which causes suffering. And the whole idea of detaching yourself doesn't mean not busting your ass. It doesn't mean not fighting like hell to give 100%, but not being specifically attached to a specific result, being invested in the process.
That makes a lot of sense. When it comes to that attachment and that suffering and that expectation, things just never go the way you want. And that's man, you're right though. I didn't even think about what the logic in this, like the rationale of acting and the statistics.
Yeah,
they're bad.
Dude, look at baseball for a second.
Right.
If you get it right 3 times out of 10, you go to Cooperstown.
That's crazy.
You make millions of dollars a year.
Right.
Babe Ruth, who for the longest time was the home run king, was also the strikeout king.
Right.
So
right.
you just gotta do it right when it counts. I tell a lot of my clients, I said, I don't need you to be perfect constantly, but I need you to be consistently good, because if you're perfect, take diet and weight loss for instance. If you're perfect for 5 days out of the week, but you go drink like a fish and eat burgers all weekend long, you completely undo the results, right? But if you're consistent for 7 days, but and you have a little something here and there so that you're not feeling like you're in a cage, you will get results. It's kind of like the tortoise and the hare. Slow and steady wins the race. Yeah. It's have you ever heard of the Japanese concept of Kaizen?
No.
So Kaizen was a Japanese philosophy that was actually made famous by a guy named Edward Demings and General Douglas MacArthur after World War II, when the Japanese industrial base had been, gutted because of the war.
Yeah.
And they came back in to rebuild it. And it was the idea that in the factories, they were going to use slow and steady wins the race, constant improvement, constant diagnostics, constant tweaking, and just incremental progress, rather than kind of the grip it and rip it method.
Sure.
And it has been proven that over the long haul, slow and steady does win the race.
When has it not? I mean, I feel like most things, anything that is extremely fast, grows fast, typically has a harder downside.
Absolutely.
And there's a study called the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is the less you know about something, the more confident you are about it.
Boy, is that the truth?
Right? And so then what happens is you have this high spike of confidence with no information. And then as you learn information, you become less confident.
Right.
And then as you have more skill or expertise, you get more confident, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that kind of relates where most people, that get this extreme success really fast have no expertise, which means you just automatically assume you're an expert, and then quickly you realize I'm not at all.
And I think if you look at most people that are extremely successful, quote unquote failure is a huge part of that success. There's this great quote by Michael Jordan. I'm going to botch it, but he basically says, I missed X amount of game-winning points. I missed X amount of free throws. When I was given the ball and there were 2 seconds left, I blew it X amount of times, and that's why I'm successful. And it's like you must fail, be able to come back from it, be able to learn from it to be successful. You always feel badly, not badly, but I'd be lying if I said it was feeling truly badly for like some young actor who just hits it, his first 3 months out in Hollywood and then just continues for several years without knowing the struggle.
Right.
I struggled for a long time, and it's in that struggle that you learn a lot, and I think it's like that for anything.
It is. I'm not an actor, and that's how you have to do it. Running a business is the same as being an actor, right? Like you are independent, you're doing something, you're building something, you're taking time to work on something, and it doesn't always work super fast.
It doesn't, but it's kind of like the universe saying, I'm going to throw you this curveball because you need to learn how to deal with this lesson for when you really are successful.
That's the part that I agree with you the most on, is that imagine things did take off immediately for you. Is that all of a sudden when things are at this peak and there's more money involved, more people involved, more talent involved, and you're so you have no experience or significant less experience in everything, it's hard to manage that, and it's hard to you have a lot more to lose is the point I'm making.
I have a lot of doctors in my family, and in medical school they work on cadavers sometimes, right?
Yeah, sure.
And they get tested on things, and if you don't do well, it's pretty crushing, right?
Yeah.
But imagine if you don't do well on a child in the emergency room. How crushing would that be? And so there's a reason why maybe you're doing something where you're getting a test on a cadaver and it doesn't go well, and you're really crushed for a while about it. You don't know that that's preparing you to go save someone's life 20 years from then.
Right.
We don't humans have a really difficult time seeing the 30,000 foot view. And so we tend to qualify things in a binary way. This is good, this is bad, this is positive, this is negative. And when you do that, you're getting attached to a story. And unfortunately, a lot of times those stories tend to be disempowering. And so if you can stay in the present and just resist the temptation to allow the pendulum to swing so far in one way or the other, like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever, or this is the worst thing ever, and just sort of take it as it comes and deal with it as best you can and stay out of the judgment business.
That makes a lot of sense. What we talked about in the beginning is a perfect example of that, right? Something really scary ended up shaping a huge part of your character. How would you know that? How would you know that thing that was negative could end up being really positive?
I talk all the time with my clients. I say, I was divorced about 20 years ago, and it was crushing. It was a devastating failure, but and I really for a while I attached this story that maybe I wasn't lovable, maybe I didn't deserve to have a great partner. But had I known at the time that concluding that relationship would free me up to meet my wife Michelle, who is my everything, would I have allowed myself to have so much mental drama and circus going on? I'm not saying don't feel something, don't walk through the flames, don't grow from it. But when it becomes kind of a debilitating story that you're carrying into your future, then you got to figure out how to reframe that story.
Right. There was a woman who I went to a leadership class called the Landmark Forum.
Oh, I know what that is.
Yeah, I went to that, and she went around and she took people's glasses and put them on her face, and had maybe 6 pairs of glasses on her head. And she was like, "How am I supposed to see anything?
Right.
I can't see anything." Right. And everyone's like, "What the hell's the point of this, lady?" And she's like, "When you bring your past into, let's say, a relationship." You're bringing all these other problems, all these other, your exes, this, that, you're carrying all this baggage with you. You can't see anything straight. You can't see anything. And so she's like, you need to clear up your own past. You need to
do.
get rid of all these things and like be able to see normally so that you can actually make good decisions. Because otherwise, you're just bringing a bunch of stuff into this relationship that doesn't belong there.
A big part of that is identifying the stories in your life and really getting honest with yourself about, is this a story that I concocted as an explanation or a rationalization, and how's it affecting my life? And there's this great story. I wish I made it up, but I didn't. It's quick, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
So there was a woman, she was a reporter, and she was on Skid Row, and she was doing a story about Skid Row, and she was interviewing this alcoholic bum. And she said, how is it that you managed to come to this place in your life? And he said, well, I had an alcoholic father. He beat me. He beat my mother, beat my twin brother, drank a pint of whiskey every day. How else would I have grown up? And she was so intrigued by this that she decided to track down his twin brother. So she shows up at this gorgeous house, and she's like, this can't be right. She knocks on the door. It's a very put-together, middle-aged man opens up with just the slightest physical resemblance to the guy on Skid Row. And he said, please come in. I want to introduce you to my beautiful family. He said, I've been a doctor for 40 years in the community. And she said, how is it that you were able to put together this incredible life? And he said, well, I had a father who was an alcoholic, drank a bottle of whiskey every day, beat my mother, beat my twin brother. How else would I have grown up? I've never touched alcohol. Two people, identical circumstances, very different stories they attached, completely changing the trajectory of their lives.
Yes. Yeah. It's all about what you put into it. And most of the stuff that we remember has been really misarranged and misconstrued, and it's only my information and my perspective of stuff that may not have even really happened the way that I remember it.
We see things through a prism with 1,000 facets.
Yeah.
And you and I have certain facets that are the same. We're both guys. We both live in America. We both live in the 21st century.
Right.
And then the prisms start to change. What if you live in sub-Saharan Africa? What if you're a woman? Are you gay? Are you straight? Da-da-da-da. And before you know it, everybody has, do you live in a communist government? Do you live in a Western democracy? All of these little facets have a way of slightly changing how you infer a story and process the information, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Infer an event and then create a story.
Yeah. Your perspective constantly is shifting and shifting and shifting. And then the other part of that is, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? And then that adds a whole nother thing.
From a broken home? Did you come from a great home? What's your education?
Right. And all those things, which I just think it's so crazy about how you can have someone who, say, like, I grew up with not a ton of money, right? We were lower class.
Mm-hmm.
And so I met someone who came from a really, really wealthy family, and it was bizarre about the same feelings that we had, but they were just manifested in different ways. Oh, my mom worked 3 jobs, so I'm like, oh, I always felt kind of alone. And they go, I had a babysitter who
my parents were in Europe all the time.
Exactly. I had a nanny,
really
and I always
interesting.
felt alone. And it's like, well, I thought that if we had a ton of money, that we would be, but both people had the same feelings, right? And so, kind of to
we're so much more alike than we are different, and people really should stop looking at other people as these monoliths. We assign values to different groups and think that value carries through for all people of those groups. And people are a 1,000 nanoshades of gray.
Right.
They're not black and white.
Yeah. We have a lot more in common, but we have so much in common, and then our perspectives just are the only things that make us different.
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm kind of getting to, is that our upbringing and things shape us a certain way.
Absolutely.
But it's really interesting because it's all subjective. There's only like a few things that everyone has agreed, like, you can't kill people. We all think that's bad. Everyone is like,
have we agreed on that?
Well, I think
Have we agreed on that?
You gotta tell me something.
But
I'm just messing with you.
I mean, like, for instance, one of the things I do with my clients is I talk about the necessity to create a personal code, right? So you can say, for instance, that part of my code is honesty. Okay, I will not steal. Okay, well, what happens if you're in a war zone and your neighbor's door is open and they have a loaf of bread there and your wife and child are dying? is it then acceptable to take that loaf of bread if your neighbor's not there? So when you say we've all agreed that killing is wrong,
I guess you're right.
This is why we have wars. This is why we have, people who are terrorists who believe what they're doing is right, because their perception is so different, but so real to them.
Right. Well, and that's more of the point I was getting to, is that there is no right thing. We don't all have our perspectives.
I don't
aren't
think we all agree on the
That's
right
what I
thing.
mean.
I think
That's what
there's
I mean.
some things that are right, but I
That's
see
what
you're
I was
saying.
trying to
Yeah.
get to, is that
Yeah.
everyone's perspectives are so different.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that think this is the answer, this is the answer. But how can any of us know for sure that what I believe is 100% the fact and the truth?
Absolutely.
And so really, when it comes to accepting more people and things like that, it's more about just like being more open to just listening.
Yeah.
What is going on? Why do you think that? That's my favorite part.
Right.
Some of my best friends have the complete opposite ideas on some of core values of religious beliefs or this or that, and I'm able to say, well, why do you feel like that? That's interesting, and that strengthens or helps me understand more about another
I think it
belief.
strengthens if you're dealing with somebody that you can have a civil and respectful conversation about differences. It's when people take an emotion-based standpoint and they're not interested in learning or sharing. They're just sort of interested in shouting down, your idea so theirs is heard.
Yeah.
And we've got to stop talking at each other, to each other, and start talking with each other.
Well, it's really hard, because I think the things that we know the least about what happens after I go away, who should be in office, these things that are really triggering, it's because it makes up our identity. Right? Like these are
Absolutely.
these are things that parents have told us is the good thing, or this is a bad thing, or this, that, whatever it is, how you grew up, whatever that may be. But when I attacked your identity by saying, I believe this and you're wrong, then you trigger me to be like, well, you're attacking my identity. No, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And then we fight. But for what?
Right.
I guess I'm at the point in my life where I realize I know a lot of very little. I don't know anything.
Who used to say that was Socrates. He said, I'm a wise man because I know nothing. And, if you really distill down the reason that we all become triggered, it comes from two places. It comes from fear or love to a lesser degree. And
Sure.
if you're able, when you get triggered, and it's hard. I mean, I struggle with it too. But when you're getting triggered, if you can just say, okay, why am I getting so triggered by this? And if you can deconstruct it in yourself first, rather than trying to deconstruct it in the other guy who's wrong, you're going to be a lot better off, I think.
Yeah. And if you can just for 1 second take your perspective and say, you know what, I'm just going to sit this over here for a second.
Yeah.
Why do you feel like this?
Right.
That's really interesting. Why do you believe this is right or this is wrong or whatever you're talking about? You'll end up learning a lot.
True.
And it may not shift your belief. You may say, well, I still don't agree with you.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting.
But
Now
also
I know your point.
You can disagree with somebody without having to eviscerate the core of who they are as a person. I mean, right?
Yes.
It's just unbelievable that, so many people disagree about one thing, and that means that they just disagree about everything and have to.
We're not friends anymore.
Exactly.
Why? So what?
Yeah.
We don't agree about this one thing. Hey, we talked about it. Maybe we just don't. We just don't talk about that anymore.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't hate you now.
Right.
But that's what I think. A lot more people are trying to do. Be a little more listening. I think they're trying. I'm not saying it's working.
We need to try more.
I know.
I mean, we really do. I have a lot of great hopes and aspirations for all of us for 2024, but we've got a lot of potentially very significant challenges and hurdles, and we need to all be aware and tolerant and try and come from a place of kindness and goodness as best we can, because I think it's going to take a group effort to get us through some of the stuff that's coming down the pike.
I agree with you. And it starts with individuals that
Absolutely.
then gather together and then gather more and more and more, and it kind of spreads, just like the law of attraction, right?
Yes, yeah.
When I moved here, everyone told me back on the East Coast are like, oh, you're moving to California. Everyone's this and that. And there's a lot of whatever it is.
Generalizations.
Generalizations about people,
so
right?
You say, have you ever lived in California? No, but I know. They're all like this. They're all like that, right?
Right. They all assume,
How do you
right?
know?
Yeah. And then I get here and had the complete opposite experience. I met great people here.
Yeah.
And it's just really funny because that was the whole thing. Oh, well, I came out here. I met great people. I felt like I attracted that. And
I would postulate that their projection of people not being great in one place or another might be the reason they continue to have experiences with people that aren't great. It's law of vibration. It's law of attraction.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Well, of course you're not attracting good people. You're negative all
right,
the time, right? I mean,
right.
you're telling me how bad of a decision I'm making as I'm telling you it's the most exciting thing in my life.
And it applies to everything too, because I told you Michelle and I are writing the new Way of the Cobra book, Cobra Couples. And so part of it is about dating. And, if you're out there looking for, quick hookups and, you're getting hammered on the weekends and, you're waking up next to stuff. If that's what you're looking for, that's what you're going to get more of, if that's what you're putting out there. If you decide, I'm ready for an adult committed relationship, it might not happen right away, but those are the people that are prospective candidates for something like that. So we kind of get what we're putting out there.
Of course,
right?
If you're looking for this, you're gonna find it. It's not hard.
I say that all the time.
Yeah, it's not hard for you to find it. It's easy, and especially nowadays. Dating is way different than it used to be. It's
it's like being offended. There are people that are professional victims of offense, and they just constantly are on the hunt to find the next thing that offends them and that egregious them. And they're in a constant state of turmoil because they're just always offended.
Yeah.
No
thanks.
Yeah, no thanks, right?
You offended me. No, just kidding. But
I get better things to do.
Well, we have so much going on now, and in a good way. And my life is a lot more cushioned than I've ever thought it would be. Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm grateful for. And to think that I'm gonna invent a problem that I don't need to have.
Right.
I got actual problems, man. I got stuff going on around me that I can actually take care of. Not
manufacturing them.
Yeah, I don't need to make them. I'm good. I don't want any.
But
surprise.
It is, humans, we are funny monkeys, aren't we?
Yeah,
we just left to our own devices, we can create problems and drama where there aren't any.
You know what we do? We create a story.
You create a story.
You create a little story in your head. Yeah. The breakdown is you hear or see something, and then you tell yourself a story about it, and then you react to it.
Yeah.
And so you do those three things.
And then you get triggered again, and you react again, and now you've created a habit loop, and you've reinforced it.
Which is terrible. Yeah. And then we're just doing the same thing over and over and over again, trying to get a different result, and then we're insane.
That's the definition of insanity.
But I did want to talk to you about the new book that you have coming out too. So give me a little bit about. I know you said it's about couples and dating and some things of working together. I'm gauging on, but give us just a little hint.
Well, Michelle and I have been married for 12 years now, and I don't think Hollywood's the easiest place to be married in.
Sure.
And we have managed to have a really successful marriage. It doesn't mean that probably once a month we call it a bench clear. She's Sicilian, and I've been known to have a little temper in the past too. And about once a month, we like to have the decibels get turned up a little, but we get rid of it. But we've got really, really good communication and respect and all that sort of stuff. So we were talking about just sharing some of the concepts that have allowed us to have a successful marriage within the framework of the Way of the Cobra books.
Yeah.
Talking about ways that people can be happier in a relationship, and it doesn't, gay, straight, whatever, married, committed relationship, not married. There are certain pillars that you need to look at to have a successful relationship, no matter what.
There's constants.
What flavor relationship it is, right?
Yes.
And I also like the idea of bringing my wife into it and having having a woman's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
She's very wise. She's got a lot of great stuff. She's taught me a lot about myself and about life, and I like to think maybe I've taught her a thing or two. And I think that this is something that people need. We're not professional psychiatrists. We're just like,
Two people who figured some
people
stuff
are trying
out
to figure some stuff out
and help some other people.
Yeah, and we're learning as we write this, and coming from a place of honesty and revealing, and it's a pretty cool process. And I was a little worried. I was like, okay, is this going to be difficult for the two of us, and is it going to wind up being maybe combative sometimes? So far it hasn't been. So far it's been
That's really nice.
really good experience.
Yeah, that working with someone is a good way to find out how you really.
Yeah.
And I would imagine being married is you guys are in a partnership, you guys are working together, but then when it's writing a book and you're really focused and you guys have ideas and how that works, like it's probably really powerful. Probably bring you guys closer together, which is really cool.
What's interesting is, it facilitates a dialogue about our relationship as we're discussing, the different subjects how we're going to approach them and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's helpful and good and positive to deconstruct the topics with relation to, and it's not all stuff that we put in the book.
Sure.
Some of it's just for us.
Yeah.
But we're talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think that the communication is what's so important.
And isn't it wild that when you start to write something down, all of a sudden the perspective that you have is now you have to explain it to yourself. So then you're writing it down. So then you remember things.
Yes.
You're like, oh, wow, we should implement this in our, wow, we used to do this. Or, oh, you know what? I haven't been doing this that much, and we used to, and I should. And
absolutely.
All of a sudden you're relearning things you already knew, but you didn't have you didn't write it down, so it didn't transfer the same.
It's a really cool process. We're just sort of in the beginning right now, but we'll be getting this book out this year.
That's good.
And
that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I was going to ask you, is that we just passed New Year's and stuff. Do you guys have any resolutions or things that you're thinking about, or goals?
I don't make resolutions. I don't. No? What I do is I just commit to being better than I was last year. And the way that I do that is by, refining my habits, just constantly looking, where can I tweak myself? My last book is called Welcome to the Kumite, and the Kumite is an epic battle, right? Well, who's the battle against? It's against your greatest opponent, which of course is you. How do you defeat that opponent? By becoming a wiser, kinder, stronger, more self-aware version of who you were yesterday. And you affect almost a metaphoric death of who you were yesterday to be reborn today and get another chance. And that's one of the first things in every morning when I thank God. I list 5 things that I'm grateful for, and I'm like, thank you for letting me have one more day to try and be a better version of who I was yesterday. I don't always get it right, but it's in the trying that I think is the importance.
Yeah, is the important part of actually trying. And I understand too. I mean, doing stuff on a New Year's resolution is kind of tough because all of a sudden you're just deciding, oh, I'm going to change my whole life this year.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't have the same effect as one day in March you wake up and you go, I got to switch some stuff up. And you start writing some goals down, and it's almost a little forced.
Yeah.
And some people do it and it holds out.
And if it works for them, that's
great. Yeah. But I'm kind of the same way. I'll write stuff down, but it's always like a week or two into January.
Writing's interesting because it's been psychologically proven that writing something down creates a stronger bond with your mind than entering it in a computer on a keyboard.
I always write.
Yeah, writing's really, really powerful.
I think so too.
Journaling. I mean, I don't do it all the time.
Sure.
But sometimes you're not ready to talk to somebody else about something. But when you start writing it down, you're effectively having a conversation with yourself.
And you can
get it out there.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to get to about you is that you've been well dressed on a lot of different things. You like to wear all kinds of nice stuff. I feel like you've traveled a lot. You've seen a lot of fashion. And
I've got a really good tailor.
I appreciate it. But outside of the stuff I make you and stuff, I'm just kind of curious of what you like to wear. What would you call your kind of like your style, I guess?
My style, I guess I guess probably a lot of my influence is more East Coast.
Hmm.
You know, I like wearing suits.
Yeah.
I don't like when suits are, uncomfortable and too buttoned down. But I like the feel of a suit.
Sure.
It's kind of like if you talk to women, a lot of them say, I like wearing heels. It makes me feel really confident. I like wearing a nice suit. I like wearing,
Yeah.
lace up shoes,
That makes sense.
but really, I'm also kind of a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy too,
Mm-hmm.
when it's just sort of casual during the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to be formal all the
You got to
time.
remember what I do for a living though. So, I mean, I'm dressing and undressing and dressing and undressing.
Sure.
So, when I get a chance to be comfortable,
You're
I
taking it.
like to be comfortable. Generally, when I go out, I do like to try and,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like to,
Feel good.
yeah.
Yeah. You look great today.
Well,
man.
this is a
You look
phenomenal,
sharp.
this suit you made is phenomenal.
Well, you
It's
paired it
just-
well though. You look
it's-
great.
It's beautiful. It feels great. And, the details you put into it. I mean, I love that my name's in it. I mean, but it's spectacular. And you're incredibly talented at what you do and very generous. And I'm honored to wear what you make for me.
Wow, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, it looks good on you, man.
Thank
you
you.
do it. You're a good
This is the
example.
This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, as Bogart said in Casablanca.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
So I look forward to many more collaborations.
I appreciate it, man. I was curious about some of your inspirations, like things that make you excited or things that get you going that kind of inspire you throughout your life.
I think film has always been a big source of inspiration. For me, film, when it's good, shows us the very best of who we can be.
Mm.
It's the reason why you get that feeling at the final fight of Rocky, no matter how many times you see it. It just has an emotional resonance with us. So many different films have been big influences on me. My wife is a huge inspiration and influence. Art. I mean, I love to go and look at paintings and music. And,
Yeah.
I think you got to feed your soul, right? Food.
Yeah.
Maybe
You
a little
like
too much sometimes. But, I think it's important to look outside to help you look inside. And I think it's important for you to look inside to help you appreciate what's outside.
Makes a lot of sense. It makes sense too. You're a very creative person, so the creative things really speak to you. Music, film, things like
Yeah.
that. They really resonate with you.
And I think relationships too, friendships. And
Yeah.
I think friendships, when they're really good and they're friendships that they feed each other, and those are inspiring.
Yeah, there should be a good give and take where you guys are helping each other all the time. How can we help each other? How can we help each other?
Absolutely. And
That's an amazing thing to find when
Yeah.
you have people that we're stronger together. And
Absolutely. And it gets harder. It doesn't get harder. As you get older, it's like your dance card gets full.
Sure.
You meet somebody and you really like them, especially when you're married. You're like, my wife is who I spend the majority of my time with.
Sure.
So when you do choose to let somebody into your world and they do yours, it's like a pyramid. I mean, when you're in your 20s, you can be friends with a lot of people, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And as you get older, you sort of learn what you do want and don't want, and your time not only becomes more valuable because you're getting older, time is a finite commodity.
It's very finite. Yeah. So then all of a sudden you're more selective of who
More
I'm spending
selective.
time with, and
Yeah.
then if you have children and things like
Children,
that starts taking
yeah.
more time, and then their
Yeah.
activities. It really narrows it down, and then
does.
you're like, you know what? I have 3 hours. Who do I want to spend them with?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just yourself.
Sometimes myself.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. If you can get to a place where you like spending time with yourself, boy, that's a really nice place to be.
If someone doesn't feel like that, what's some recommendations you might give them? What's something you would say? How to guide someone to kind of get there? Some advice. You do coaching and things like that. So just
I think that really that should be the catalyst for a journey of some introspection to find out why you don't like being by yourself. Is it something you don't like about yourself, or is it something that's kind of phobic about being alone? There's different reasons. A lot of times people don't like being by themselves because they get anxious. And anxiety comes from projecting an unknown result into the unknown future. It's staying in the present, learning to be calm, learning to not have to do something to fill your time and space, but just be.
Mm.
And it's hard. It took me a long time. I'm still learning it. But if you feel like maybe you're uncomfortable being by yourself, I think that's the universe saying to you that maybe it's time you kind of do a little inside work, figure out why. I didn't always like being by myself, and it wasn't because of anxiety, you
Yeah.
know. And I love myself now. I really do. And it wasn't always the case. And when you get to a place where you're like, wow, I really like who I am, it's a really empowering, warm, good feeling.
Yes.
Because it's like, it's the difference between happiness and meaningful happiness.
Mm.
Happiness is generally when you feel good as a result of something external. You know, sex, food, you're doing an activity that's fun, you know, you're with somebody, but then when that goes away, you're on the hunt to look to recreate that. Meaningful happiness is when you have an internal sense of happiness and you can have a really shitty day and still be a meaningfully happy person. We all have difficult, challenging, bad days. But it doesn't mean that you have to be unhappy.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to be. You
Yeah.
can. That's a choice.
Yeah.
And there's always stuff that's hard and stuff that struggles, and you're allowed to have a grace period. But at some point,
Yeah.
you got to move on and get things
Yeah.
going. And I'm one of those people. I've always liked being alone. I'm more of a.
Yeah.
I like being by myself, but I like also working with people a lot. I need that balance. I need to go out in the world, go talk to people, and then I need to hurry up and get home.
I
And
think if you like being with people and working with them, it's even more important that you have that time by yourself to recharge, to process, to think about it, and then come back out of the cave at the head of the pack even stronger so you can keep being the best version of yourself.
that's all I do. I need that time to myself to refocus, make sure I'm okay, make
Yeah.
sure I can give 100% to everyone, and be focused.
Because if you don't, you run the risk of always putting the spotlight on other people so that you don't shine it on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a way of deflecting, and not in a good way. You know, you have to you have to examine your own life.
Yep.
And one of the best times to do that is by yourself.
Yeah, and you can, and being alone doesn't mean sitting in your room looking at a phone, right? Like
Yeah.
being alone could just
Go
be
for a walk.
just existing without a distraction necessarily always needed to be shoved in your throat. And that's, I do think that now more than ever it is really hard to not have a distraction, to just be present and
Boy, you're so right.
be with someone.
You're so right. And you know, as I'm reading a book right now, and I didn't realize this, but there's 8 billion people, I guess, on the planet.
Yeah.
It's funny. I remember when it was 4.
Wow.
And as our population continues to explode and grow, our ability to have moments alone are going to become more and more of a commodity. And you got to learn to embrace them. You know, we take for granted that we still are able to do that. You know, there's places in China and India where the density of population is so thick that it's just really difficult to be alone with your own thoughts.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. It's so many people on top of each other. The train, every place
and
you
it's
go
just
is just
constant bombardment of, you know, external messaging from TV and other people and da-da-da-da. And then you have the internal monkey chatter inside your head.
Yeah.
And so you got to find those moments to get quiet and just kind of, you know.
Do you feel like that? Information or that feeling that you're talking about right now, that idea? Do you think you learned that through martial arts? Is that, you feel like that's a part of it, or?
I think that's part of it. Martial arts. I think meditation is really important. But I think you have to get quiet with yourself so you can do 2 things. So you can listen to the music in your soul, and you can listen to the message from the universe. But if you're constantly just in this swirling, bombastic tornado of external distractions, you know, pursuits of pleasure and things like that, and don't have the ability to kind of get quiet every now and then you're missing a lot of the way the universe talks to you.
I think you're really right. Yeah, man, you know what? On that note, I think our message here is done. You've been an honor, a pleasure. You have just top tier person. So I
you,
appreciate
man.
you
It's been great talking to you,
giving
too.
us such amazing wisdom for free here and telling everyone just really great stuff. It was
You, buddy.
great getting to know you more.
You too, man. Absolutely.
All right, man. That's it for
That's
Root
it.
So.